You know, when you think of virtual reality, you probably think of video games, right? Escaping to another world. But what if I told you its most powerful use isn't about escaping reality, but about understanding it? Today, we're going to explore how VR is turning from science fiction into scientific fact, completely revolutionizing how we do research. Let's get into it. So let me ask you a question. How do you study something that's, well, basically impossible to study? I mean, think about it. How could you possibly research how people behave in a real crisis or in a super high-stakes business deal? You can't just, create these situations. It'd be way too dangerous, totally unpredictable, not to mention a nightmare to control for an experiment. For the longest time, researchers were stuck. These questions were just theoretical. The best they could do was hand someone a survey and ask, hey, what do you think you'd do in this situation? But that's all changing. A huge barrier is coming down, thanks to technology that can literally put people inside the experiment. All right, so here's our plan for this explainer. We're going to start with what we're calling the research holodeck. Then we'll go beyond the uncanny valley to see why now is the time for VR. After that, we'll step into the ultimate social laboratory. And then we'll look ahead, welcome to the Metaverse, and finish up on the virtual frontier. Okay, first up, the research holodeck. And yeah, that's a bit of a Star Trek reference, but it's perfect. The idea here is to completely shift how we think about VR. It's not just a toy. It's a serious scientific instrument. It's a tool that lets someone get totally lost in a digital world, making an abstract concept feel completely real. So, what are we talking about when we say VR? Well, at its core, it's a computer-generated world where you can move around and interact just like you're actually there. But here's the kicker. This idea isn't new. Not at all. It was first proposed for research more than 20 years ago. The vision was there, but the tech? Oh man, it was just too clunky, way too expensive. It just couldn't deliver. It's only right now that the technology has finally caught up with the dream. And that's the perfect lead-in to our next section, going beyond the uncanny valley. So, if this idea has been kicking around for decades, what's different now? Right? What actually changed to make VR finally ready for prime time as a legit research tool? Well, the short answer is the technology is just ready. It's finally here. Modern VR isn't just a little bit better, it's a quantum leap forward. We're talking more powerful, way more immersive, and this is the big one, it's actually affordable now. We've got these incredible headsets, sophisticated software, even haptic suits that let you physically feel things in the virtual world. This stuff isn't science fiction in a lab anymore. It's accessible. And the realism? It's just wow. Using today's 3D engines, researchers can build pretty much any place they can dream up. You're not just looking at a picture of a forest on a screen. No. You're in the forest. You can hear the leaves crunch under your feet. And it's not just a simulation of a factory. You can actually feel the vibrations from the heavy machinery through the floor. It's that real. It's not just about the places either. It's about the people inside them. Researchers can create what they call virtual confederates, basically digital actors. And these avatars are now so realistic that they finally cross the uncanny valley. You know that feeling, right? When you see a robot or an animation that's almost human, but something's just off, it's creepy. Well, today's virtual humans don't have that problem. They just look and feel natural. And this is where things get really, really interesting. It's one thing to look real. It's another thing to act real. With new advances in AI, these virtual people are about to be able to hold complex, totally unscripted conversations. Just think about that. A research subject you can interact with who can genuinely react and adapt in real time. That's a whole new level of realism we've just never had before. So, we have the tech. It's realistic. It's accessible. This brings us right to our third section, the ultimate social laboratory. The big question is, now what? What can we actually do with all this power? Well, what you can do is create a perfectly controlled, totally safe sandbox to study human behavior in ways that were completely off limits before. And this, right here, this is probably the single biggest leap. Think about the old way. You give someone a piece of paper that describes a workplace conflict, and you ask, so, what would you do? You're getting their intention. But with VR, you put them in that conflict with a virtual supervisor. You're not asking what they might do, you're watching what they actually do. That gap between intention and action, for a social scientist, closing that gap is everything. It's a total game changer. This also opens the door to studying things that are just impossible in the real world, things that are too dangerous or raise huge ethical red flags. You can run a simulation of an emergency to see how people really respond under pressure. You could even revisit controversial historical studies, like the famous Milgram obedience experiment, but do it in a way where absolutely no one is in any real danger. And you can apply this to so many different fields. I mean, imagine this. For organizational behavior, you could put a participant in a one-on-one meeting with a boss who's programmed to be abusive. For strategy, you could drop them into the middle of a tense boardroom negotiation. Or, for entrepreneurship, have them give a make-or-break pitch to a room full of skeptical virtual investors. Really, your imagination is the only limit here. But it goes even deeper than just watching what people do. VR lets you collect all these amazing new streams of data about what they're feeling on the inside. Modern headsets can track exactly where you're looking. They can read your facial expressions. You can hook up sensors to measure heart rate, your breathing, even the electrical activity on your skin to gauge stress. It's like getting a direct, real-time window into someone's psychological state, all without ever having to ask them a single question. Okay, so this is where we pivot a little. It's a really fascinating shift. Up to now, we've been talking about VR as a tool for studying our world, the real world. But what happens when VR stops being just a tool and becomes a world of its own? And that, of course, brings us to Section 4. Welcome to the Metaverse. And that's the big question that's really pushing the whole field forward. See, the Metaverse isn't just a temporary lab you visit for an experiment. It's becoming a persistent digital society, a place where millions of people are going to work, socialize, and live parts of their lives. And because of that, we desperately need to understand it. And look, don't think this is some far-off futuristic concept. A prediction from Gartner says that by 2026, that's just around the corner, a full quarter of the population will be spending at least 1 hour every single day in the Metaverse. 1 in 4 people. That's a huge societal shift that's happening incredibly fast, and it creates this massive, urgent need to study what's going on. So, what is the Metaverse? It's basically a network of interconnected virtual worlds that are always on, where we show up as avatars. Now, from a research perspective, here's where it gets wild. You can be anyone. You can change your avatar's appearance, their ethnicity, anything. This opens up this incredible can of worms, in a good way, for researchers. It raises all these mind-bending questions about identity, about social dynamics in these anonymous spaces. It's a whole new frontier. Okay, so let's pull all of this together and wrap up with our final section, the virtual frontier. We've talked about all this amazing potential, but what does it mean in practice? If you're a researcher, how do you even get started? And, just as important, what are the bumps in the road you need to look out for? So if you're thinking about jumping in, the advice is pretty straightforward. First, think bigger. Don't just see VR as one specific tool for one type of experiment. See it as a whole new platform. Second, you gotta get your hands dirty. Consider learning the tools, like the 3D engines used to build these worlds. And third, this is a call to action for everyone. The whole research community has to evolve. We need reviewers and journals who get VR so they can evaluate this kind of work fairly. But let's be real for a second. It's not all sunshine and roses. VR is not a magic bullet. There are definitely challenges. For one, building a good VR study takes a lot of time. And collecting the data can be slow. Sometimes you're just running one person through at a time. And because it's so new, yeah, you should probably expect some pushback or skepticism. It's an amazing tool for sure, but you have to go in with your eyes wide open. Which brings us to the perfect way to wrap this all up. Maybe the best way to really understand what we've been talking about isn't to just listen to me. It's to experience it. As the authors of our source material put it, you gotta put on a headset and immerse yourself. Unleash your own imagination. Because the biggest question isn't just what researchers will find. It's what we'll all discover about our world, our work, and even ourselves as this virtual frontier becomes a bigger and bigger part of our reality.